Wine to Five is partially funded by Albarello Luxury Hand Soap, an unscented must-have accessory for anyone who loves wine, cooking, and food. For more information, visit albarellosoap.com.
It's not 5 o'clock, and they don't care. Welcome to Wine to Five. Entertainment, education, and everyday drinking for everyday people. Your hosts are Valerie Caruso and Stephanie Davis, two wine educators who don't need a clock to know when to pour that next glass.
Welcome back to another edutainment episode of Wine to Five. Hey, Val.
Hey, Steph. Happy Thirsty Thursday.
Happy Thirsty Thursday.
Hey, everybody. We decided to take last week's Chardonnay episode up a notch and roll it into a little primer on Burgundy. So, of course, neither one of us are drinking Burgundy today, are we?
I have a Pinot Noir open from Oregon, and I was like, oh, I could go for that on Burgundy Day. And I was like, no, I'm still going after this Chocolina.
Awesome. So that's what you're drinking today.
Yeah.
Bubbles.
Yeah. It's got this fun little zip to it. And Justin and I had that as a little aperitif yesterday before the debate. But no, we're not going to talk about the debate. We're not going to do that. But this is a nice wine, and I like it. Again, we've talked about this, low in alcohol, so that means you can, feel less guilt about having that second glass. But so, yeah, 10.5% alcohol. It's a 2014, and boy, the name of this, I did not look up how to pronounce it. It's like Zudgarai, but it's a Chocolina, and I think it's the same producer that we had for your birthday, Val.
I think it was, and I think it's the one that Andrew, I believe, was drinking for a hashtag W25 challenge. No, he had a different one.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But it has a cool sailing ship on it, and it's in one of those beautiful lean green bottles, and so I'm loving this. And I saw that the Wine Enthusiast magazine had reviewed it earlier this year, so we will include the link to that. But let's all say the grape's name.
Handarabi Zuri.
Isn't that
Handarabi Zuri. I think it's a cool name. And that grape actually has a red version too that we don't normally see.
And I've never had.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Unless it was in a tapas bar up in San Sebastian in Spain when we were up there in the Basque country. But that's really interesting. So
what have you got?
Man, well, I'm just going to go. I'm not going to talk about the debate, but I'm going to talk about what I was drinking during the debate. I think that would be kind of interesting to hear what everybody was drinking during the debate, because if that wasn't a drinking game, I don't know what was.
Seriously.
I started with beer. And then John poured me the Two Sail Scotch by Glenmorangie. And then I went straight to bourbon. Yeah. But today I have a really cool wine by Domaine Hélène Chabenot. And this one's called a Campredon, I think is how you pronounce it. Campredon. And this is a 2013 from Languedoc. And it's certified biodynamic, which means it has the Demeter symbol on the back. Totally hand harvested. It's a Syrah Morved Grenache, and I am really surprised at what a jammy fruit bomb this thing is. It's
really?
Black fruit and blackberries and violets and currants, and it is so delicious. I probably would not have put this in the old world.
I was just going to say, it sounds like the way you described it, maybe it's more New World in style.
I'm going to say, yeah. I'm going to say it's got a very New World, very, I hate the word smooth, but the tannins are really, really fine grain tannins on this, really silky. Is it like for 2013? And for those grapes, it is really inky black, but it is, man, this is really good.
Huh, yeah.
We need to get on to our discussion topic. And
yes.
What are we going to talk about today? I think we already said, didn't we?
Yeah, we were talking about some more Burgundy. We've got the sequel to last week's introduction of Chardonnay and Burgundy and the Bergfest.
Yeah, I think we're going to call this like Burgundy Basics. Because
Nice.
it is real easy to go hardcore cork dork
That it is.
into this. Because it is a wine region very few people understand. And even those of us who've studied this intently, and we have to look things up. I mean, there's no way you can just memorize all 635 plus Premier Cru vineyards. There's no way. But we're going to go a little bit deep into Burgundy today because I think it's an important wine region. It's kind of where the mothership is kind of calling us home when you study wine. It's Bordeaux and Burgundy is where you start. But actually, it's interesting to point out that this is the only wine region in France that was translated to suit English-speaking people of the wine world because they call it Bourgogne. And that's what you're going to see on the label a lot of times. You're not going to see Burgundy.
Right.
So if you see Burgundy on a wine label and the wine label is from the United States, it's not Burgundy.
That's right.
Okay? Let's just put that out there right now. So you're going to see Bourgogne. And I'm not sure why this is the only one that was translated. But if you think about Bordeaux, Alsace, Loire, Languedoc, which I'm drinking right now, that's not been translated into English. So, and I think Languedoc-Roussillon is harder to say than Bourgogne.
Yeah.
But this is a wine region. So when we say Burgundy, we're talking about a region. Generally, we're talking about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but there are quite a few exceptions. So, but most of what we're going to see on the shelf is from this wine region in northeastern France. And this region can trace its viticultural roots all the way back to before the Romans. And it's actually called Bourgogne because when the Germanic tribes that conquered the region came in, and they were called the Bourgognes, Burgondes, they named their new kingdom, of course, after themselves, and they called it Burgundia.
Of course.
So, yeah. So this would have been around the mid to late 5th century, and that's why the region kind of stuck. But if we look at a map, and maps are really cool when you're studying wine.
And if your name's Val.
Yeah. Well, I like to write all over them, but also if you have the World Atlas of Wine by Jancis, I've got two of them. I got the what is this? The 6th and the 7th edition now. Nice. But you can look on these. It's like wine region porn, and you can see the 5 kind of official regions within Bourgogne. So we talked about last week Chablis, the furthest north, but that also includes a tiny little region called the Châtillonnais and the Grand Auxerrois. So there are other regions up there around Chablis that you never hear about.
Right, and you don't get to drink them either.
No, I mean, it's really hard to find like a Saint-Brie, which is Sauvignon Blanc.
Right.
And they're like, wait, Val, you just said Chardonnay. Again, there are exceptions, and that's one of them. And there are some really cool grapes up there. If we go a little further south, then we get into, well, actually a lot further south. I'm going to say about 80, 90 miles south, depending on which way you're driving and whether you're taking toll roads. They have the beginning of the Burgundy region that we all think of, the Côte d'Or, which means the Golden Slope, and that begins around Dijon. And then that area, the Côte d'Or, is actually further divided into what we call the Côte de Nuit, which extends south to Courglois. And then we have the Côte de Beaune, which is south of the Côte de Nuit, and that extends to Les Maranges. So as we head further south along the A6 toward Lyon, if we're driving south, we have the Côte Chalonnais, which we don't hear a lot about.
Yeah, but they have great wine.
They do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good value.
And then you have the Mâconnais, and we've talked about that last week too, and that's north of Beaujolais.
Yeah, and those wines aren't too hard to find. Something from Mâconnais. So
Mâconnais,
affordable, and so that's a good choice. Boy, when you're talking about driving down towards, Lyon and everything, I'm like, oh, I haven't done that trip yet. That sounds so fabulous.
No, I haven't either. I've just been through there on train, and I would just love to, the proverbial convertible, hair blowing in the wind, pull up to a winery and...
Exactly. It is wine porn, like you say. But so there's a lot going on in this region of Burgundy. So it's important to remember, like Val already said, the 2 major grape varieties are Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. But that's not all there is. So she had mentioned Saint-Brie has, Sauvignon Blanc. But it's mostly what you're going to see, especially when you're shopping in the U.S., So you're going to see mostly Bourgogne that is a Chardonnay for white Bourgogne or Pinot Noir for the reds. And the bottle shapes also tend to be a little bit different. So you can see that you're buying Burgundy often because they have the more feminine rounded shape as opposed to the more squared shoulders of the Bordeaux style bottles. Those Bordeaux style bottles are like taller and they have those straight shoulders. And the Burgundy bottles kind of look like a champagne bottle a little bit, you know, so they're more sloped and rounded, and I think they're a little bit sexier.
I do too.
Yeah. And so style. So let's talk about style. We mentioned Chablis briefly last week and again earlier in this episode, but generally these will have a lot more acidity and take longer to mature in bottle. As for the wines from the regions further south, not as much new oak is used. So I mentioned last week that the wines would be more balanced, less oaky, but still with a structure and softness. And I love that. I love those ones that are kind of just a good, perfect in between, you know?
Yeah.
Fresh, little bit of oak, but, you know, soft.
Like a Puy Fuissé.
Yes.
From the Mâconnais.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we have to remember, though, that we have to defer to these winemakers or the producer because you can't just generalize all Burgundy, right? So
right.
we're just giving you, you know, some ways to kind of go about your shopping and understand the region, but when it comes down to it, just like Val is drinking something from the Languedoc that, in her opinion, is more of a New World style. Well, that's because the producer is choosing to make his style of wine that way. So the Burgundy is going to be the same way. I mean, not everybody follows these same, you know, typical styles. So it boils down to whatever the producer likes to do. But fine Burgundies are really known for their gentle nuances, their delicacy, their complexity, and their ability to age, and which also makes why they can be very expensive at times and sometimes just not even affordable. I mean, not your everyday drinking wine. But there still are some more fruit forward and easy to drink now, and there's some that are, you know, better off maybe 3 or 4 years. So there's a whole range of, you know, approachable, affordable, something that's maybe middle of the road, you know, that, you know, maybe it's like you drink once a month. And maybe you can hold on to it for a few years, but then there are some that really require a lot more aging, and they are very, very expensive. So Burgundy is the whole shebang.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're not being very helpful because we're not naming producers. You know, we're not naming Vosne Romanée, some of the most expensive land and wines in the world. We're not, because it depends on where you are. I hate the lists when people say, oh, the top 10. Mm-hmm. Because you may live in a place where you can't get it, or you can't get wine shipped to you, or whatever. So I don't like to go out there. But I can tell you what the Latache is, $6,000-$10,000 a bottle.
Yeah.
You know, but yet you could get a bottle of Pomar, which is going to be red, which is going to be Pinot Noir, and you can probably get that for $30-$40.
Right.
You know, so it depends on many things, not just what the winemaker chooses to do. The weather that year, they're known for being assaulted with hail, early frost. They're known for being very, very subjective to terroir, which includes climate and weather. But we're going to give you a little bit more that might help you. And so we're going to get a little geeky. But you cannot go to Burgundy without getting geeky. I'm sorry. You can't.
No, you can't.
I mean, you can't. I mean, because that's the beauty of it. But it actually has the most appellations or AOCs in France.
Yeah.
So, ironically, of the 500 or so, 20% of those are in Burgundy. So you'll see 100, you'll see 101 because they've gotten rid of one and what have you. But ironically, it also has 1/5 of the land holdings that Bordeaux would have.
Right.
Yet, it produces the 4th largest amount of wine in France. It's 4th largest in production.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. The red wines you're going to see are mostly Pinot Noir. But guess what? You're right next door to Beaujolais. Mm-hmm. And that grape is...
Gamay.
Gamay. Beaujolais. It rhymes. That's an easy way to remember it.
Yeah.
So you have something called Passe Tout Grand, AOC, and in that wine, if you can find it for your hashtag W25 challenge, it's mostly Gamay.
You know what? I have to say, I've only had it once.
I never had it.
Oh, I ordered it off of Kermit Lynch website.
Okay.
And I really liked it. I mean, it's not a fancy pants wine. I mean, it's an everyday kind of drinking, fresh, goes great with food. That I would definitely have more of that. If you could find it.
Was it expensive?
No, it wasn't expensive.
So there you go. So Passe Tout Grand is actually an appellation unto itself, an AOC. Has to be mostly Gamay, but it has to have at least 33% Pinot Noir. Mm-hmm. So a third Pinot Noir. Or it can have something called a Pinot Libo, which never had it.
No.
It's a red or a rosé. And it can also have a maximum of 15% Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, and or Chardonnay blended in.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
I love those like wines that, that are like, what? And you rarely see those unicorn wines. For us, they are.
Yeah. Well, and then there's also the Bourgogne Gamay, right?
Right.
But it has to be at least 85% Gamay. I don't think I've had one of those, actually. So
I haven't either, but I can't imagine where they would be overly expensive.
No, I'm sure it's very affordable. I mean, even though Burgundy isn't known for good value wines, you can seek out, by asking your wine purveyor, and doing some digging and some studying. I've always told people who struggle with Burgundy, because I do myself, is that you have to be very patient with yourself. I mean, it really is kind of a lifelong learning thing to really know Burgundy. And it always helps to go visit these places because, boy, I learned a lot more about Bordeaux visiting Bordeaux. So I would recommend the same for Burgundy. But be very patient with yourself. It is not intuitive, this Burgundy.
It's not. I remember when I walked in and found that Pommard, which is actually one of my favorites, and that's all red. It's always going to be red when you see it, Pommard. And I asked the purveyor, I'm like, oh, it was a, how do you have this? And she's like, it's okay. And I really loved it. I served it that night, and everybody around the table was just quiet. We all loved it. Mm-hmm. So, I guess it's hard to tell. I mean, what some people are going to like, because some people aren't going to get the earthiness that the Pinot Noir from most Burgundy producers are known for.
Right.
I mean, you'll see the Louis Jadot, and a lot of times you can get some really nice ones from there, and some Beaune. Pinot Noir that are going to be less expensive, Beaune, Beaune. But, it comes down to what you like.
Yeah.
And I like an earthy, I like a little barnyard and hay and mushroom and forest floor, the typical things you might find in a Burgundy Pinot Noir. If everything's well integrated, it's not overly oaky. Mm-hmm. I really like those. And yet some people may be like, I'm good with Oregon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But tell us about the whites. Tell us about the white wines.
Yeah. Mostly Chardonnay, like we said. But Bourgogne Aligote, I love this one, okay? I have had this and the Bouzeron. I think they're both purchased from Kermit Lynch wine merchants online. So I think when I was geeking out with my French wine scholar and drooling over these Burgundy white wines not made from Chardonnay, but the Aligote. That's how you say it, right?
Aligote.
Yeah, Aligote.
Aligote. You gotta look at where the accent is. Yeah, yes. Aligote.
And I thought, I have to have that. Like, I really want to try that. And I couldn't find it in town. So I just ordered it online. And that's what I would encourage other people to do. But those are definitely some styles that I would have as a everyday white wine. I just think that so many people would love them. They just don't know about them. They just don't know. So what is really kind of an interesting factoid is Bourgogne or Burgundy, whatever you want to say, however you want to call it, produces more white wine than red wine. I just don't know if people know that, Val. That's cool. That's a good factoid.
It is, because most of us do associate Burgundy with the more expensive Pinot Noir, or, maybe some more of the expensive Chardonnay, like the Montrachet, which people have to, have a lot of money to have. But yeah, I think that's an interesting little geeky factoid. And when you look at the labels, I think that's where people get a little confused. And we did an exercise, and I'm looking at one of my Burgundy labeling exercises for a Richebourg right now. Most of the things that you're going to find in Burgundy are going to be from a place. So all these labels are from a place. And if you have to know a little bit about these places to kind of decode the labels. So what we have is a kind of like a quality pyramid. Okay, and at the top, you have the very tippy top, you have 2% of the production, and these are what you call your Grand Cru. So when you see Grand Cru on a label, these are very, very specific single vineyard locations, and these are the most expensive.
Yeah.
And then when you have the Premier Cru, okay, they're like 635 of these.
Yeah.
They're further down the pyramid, but they're also a little bit expensive. And this is where you can actually have the village name.
Right.
Okay. So if you have like Meursault and they add Charme Premier Cru or Gevrey Chambertin, Clos Saint-Jacques Premier Cru, you're going to see one ER Cru on the label. Or remember I mentioned Pommard, but they have the Rougien Premier Cru, which is their vineyard. So you got the village, Pommard, and then you got the vineyard, Rougien, which is a Premier Cru. So you can kind of go into that level, and that is about 10% of production. Again, you're not going to see a lot of those.
Right.
Very few of those have made their way into our wine chiller, unless there was a really cool deal going on for those. But we do love them very much.
It's interesting, that you do see some of these that you would maybe expect not to, just because the collectors have created a demand. And so you might see some of these really expensive bottles and fewer choices of the less expensive ones, because even at some of the liquor stores here locally in Fort Collins, they might have these giant sections in the liquor store for Bordeaux or some different wine regions that people are more familiar with, and the Burgundy sections are really small, and they'll have a Grand Cru, a couple of Premier Cru, and then a couple of just really basic $20 Bourgogne, just basic Burgundy bottles. But that's because unless somebody's collecting, it's just not moving fast enough. And that's just because there's not enough podcasts out there to tell everybody all about it.
Oh my God. And we could do I don't know how many episodes. If we were to really deep dive into Burgundy, this would be like a 2-month series.
It would be. Every week we would talk about Burgundy for 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the Côte de Beaune, and then we could talk about the red and white crus, and then we could talk about the white only, the Corton Charlemagne and Charlemagne and the Charlemagne, and it's crazy what we could do, but we just want everybody to know that there is kind of a hierarchy. So get the Grand Cru at the top, about less than 5% of, and this is if we include Chablis in there too. So less than 5%. Some people say 2% of production. Okay, then we got the Premier Cru, which is the next level, which I mentioned earlier. So we got those. That's about 10% of production. Not a whole lot of that, but what we normally see, what we go down to, as in what we can afford, mostly our village level, or what we call down at the bottom is, and I don't want to say bottom like it's bad.
Right. It's not.
But it's not. Regional wines. So you may have seen a Rouy or a Macon or village wines that will account for about 36% or maybe more of production, depending on which numbers you're looking at.
And Rouy, by the way, I've only had it one time ever. It was not inexpensive. It was $50 a bottle.
Right.
Outstanding wine.
Yeah. Meursault. So the village wines, those account, like I said, for over 36%. And then the regional wines, these are the ones where they actually have to put Bourgogne on the label. So if you see actually the word Bourgogne, Bourgogne, they will be in the name. Okay, and that actually has to, and this is actually more than half of the wines produced. So some would say about 56% of the wines, these are regional. So you'll just see ARC Bourgogne. You won't see Grand Cru. You won't see a village name. You won't see, or highlighted in the big letters. You won't see Premier Cru or the 1ER Cru. So those are the ones that we're used to buying, and those are the ones, that's where you have to ask your purveyor. Describe this wine to me. Mm-hmm. You know, and if they can't, go shop somewhere else. Just saying.
Yeah, and I think some of the trick, too, is, for example, Pinot Noir really can be appreciated with some aeration, and each bottle is different, and just like even Joseph Perulli from Govino says, you know, it's every wine ends up is subjected to the glass that they're in, you know, but so there's a lot of that going on, I think, with, you know, your best experience for Pinot Noir, and whether it's from Burgundy or somewhere else, but, you know, if you take a sip of it and you're like, I'm just not getting the full experience. A lot of it is it needs some more air. So, you know, either you decant that bottle or maybe you use your aerator or something else. But I have been on a kick lately with a few bottles of the same wine. And after I realized that this wine needs to be decanted for about 3 or 4 hours before I serve it, and this is not an expensive bottle. This is like a $20 bottle Pinot, $25 bottle of Pinot. It is outstanding. I know I was just saying outstanding. I'm obviously on that kick right now. Yeah. But it really is so much better when you decant it. Now, not all wine, not all Pinots and not all wine is like that. But you start to figure that out. And I want to encourage people for Burgundy, you don't have to, you know, buy some expensive stuff, but definitely give it a try with some more air and see if you have a different opinion of it.
Yeah, and I was just going to thank you for not saying tremendous, because if you were drinking every time somebody said tremendous in the debates last night, you'd be on the floor. So, thank you for saying outstanding and not tremendous. All right. But, you know, something else that's interesting, back to those regional wines, you know, that we can get at, and I don't want to say the bottom of the pyramid, but actually that's the most of what's produced. That's most of what you're going to find. But you might even see the grape variety on the label. They can put that on there. They can't do it on the Grand Cru, the Premier Cru, but they can actually state the grape variety on the regional wines. And this kind of helps consumers who purchase the varietal wines in the form of Chardonnay or Pinot Noir or Aligoté.
That's a good point, Val.
Yeah, so Aligoté, less common, but you will see it on the label in the regional wines as well. And so that's kind of interesting that you can see that. And yeah, but there are red only. There are white only. There are some that have rosés. Think of Santenay. They're Cremant. They have bubbly.
I was going to ask you. Now, I'm not. I don't know this answer. Is there a sparkling made with Aligoté?
Well, it would be the Cremant de Bourgogne, and they can put it in there.
Oh. Mm-hmm. I bet I would like that.
But, okay. Yeah, so, yeah, there are other grapes that you might see also, something called Ceci. So, yeah, there's some other interesting grapes, Melon. Mm-hmm. You know, so there are other grapes that we can find in Burgundy as well. So let's talk about where people can taste some of those Grand Cru and Premier Cru that we mentioned earlier that are only about 2 and 10% respectively of all wines produced in Bourgogne.
Oh, people can taste some of these special gems at the Boulder Burgundy Festival. So that is coming up in October, the 20th through the 23rd in Boulder, Colorado. And I couldn't help but drool over the Old and Rare Burgundy seminar description. Wow.
Yeah, they didn't list the wines in that one, though.
No, but they don't have to. I'm just...
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. They listed them in the Frasca dinner that Bobby Stuckey's doing, and they're all Grand Cru and Premier Cru wines. So if you want to see an example of what those labels look like or what they would read, definitely check that out, or have a nice $400 dinner.
That's right. No, I think, I think when people are looking for something that's going to really blow their mind and wow them, it is the Boulder Burgundy Festival. This Old and Rare seminar, you're going to taste some unicorn wines. I mean, even Jay Fletcher, the master sommelier, said you really can't put a price on some of these wines. I mean, they're digging up some of the wines from not just the Guild of Sommeliers, has their own collection of wines, but then some of the people's personal sellers. I mean, some of these master sommeliers' personal sellers, Bobby Stuckey, Jay Fletcher, they're bringing wine to the seminar just for this festival. So I think that's pretty exciting, and I think it's a lot more wine porn.
It is wine porn, and I think if I could go to that, I would probably be curled up in the fetal position in a corner. Probably not even talking to anybody, just because I just want to just be with the wine.
Yeah.
And this happened at a trade tasting where somebody had come up with the DRC, and I can't remember, the Domaine Romanée Comté, again, another expensive Pinot Noir. And I was with Michaela, and we actually stopped mid-Spain tasting for a class we were doing together, and we went over to the corner and sat there. I think we had like a 99 and 06. I can't remember what the vintages were, and we just we stopped tasting after that. It's like, we don't want to taste anything else. We're just going to sit here with our DRC, and we're just going to have a moment. And we both were just quiet with our little glasses. And we went to a little corner, and we stayed. And I don't know what the hell would happen to me if I went to Old and Rare Burgundy. I don't know. I would, like I said, I'd be reduced to a puddle.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's so cool. I've never had DRC. It is on my bucket list, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a religious experience for people like me. So
yeah. I think, though, that we should move on to our shout-outs.
Yeah, we've been rambling on, and I'm going to have to cut a lot of this out. Oh, my God.
We have been on our geek patrol, and now it's time to love on our listeners. So, it's time to do the drawing. I think Val has her brown paper bag there.
I have my sexy brown paper bag. I have trolled Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the hashtag W25 challenge entries this quarter. You guys have been maniacs. I'm just going to say it. I hope you all discovered something new, because that's really the idea.
Yeah.
It's really the idea is to try. So I'm going to go ahead and reach into the bag, and I got everybody's folded up onto a sticky note. I do this old school. I know. I don't do random number generators. I just do sticky notes. So here we go. I've got this one. And Steph's watching me open it, and it is by Facebook, 12 September, for the Pasito de Panteleria. That is Michelle Miller.
Yay! Michelle Miller! Congratulations!
Oh my God. So Michelle, and remember we were saying, but it'd be so cool if she came on. Well, guess what? She is the winner. Here's my little yellow sticky.
Woohoo!
So yeah, I always put on there who it is, where they put it, what the date was, and what they were drinking. And it was your Pasito de Panteleria that won you the opportunity to come on and co-host a show with us. You get to pick the topic.
Yes!
And that will probably be sometime in November.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll be doing it in October or November. So we'll let you know. We'll put some dates out.
We'll get some dates together. We will contact you, Michelle.
Absolutely. So Michelle and Reno, you are our winner. So
congratulations.
Yeah. Should we move on to Patreon love? Our show would not be possible without you, our listener community. To find out more about how you can support Wine to Five Show, please go to patreon.com, Wine to Five Podcast.
Patreon love. Okay, so we do have a new pledge level called the Tenacious Tasters. You are just as dedicated to our Wine to Five podcast as you are to your adult beverage, wine or otherwise. We appreciate your tenacity. And so these are the $10 a month pledges on Patreon. And so to recognize our tenacious taster, Jeff, from the hilarious drinking show We Like Drinking, this whole category and pledge level is created because of you, Jeff. You guys might remember that Jeff was on our show, episode 35, and it was called We Like Drinking with a Free Lunch. And also, if you listen, the We Like Drinking podcast, you may have heard them poking fun at Val. Not just once, actually. A lot. And in her defense, however, she's never fallen off the treadmill, elliptical, or Swiss ball while listening to their show. although she's come close. And I've almost seen her fall down the stairs, actually.
Yeah.
But
haha, funny. Hey, you fell off a bench, or you fell off a stool in my kitchen.
I know. I wish we had that on video.
I know. It was cute. So
John always smirks every time I mention it. Okay. Okay, so back to the We Like Drinking dudes. They are so funny. And honestly, we couldn't be happier to have played back and forth between the shows. Jeff and the boys, both Jeffs, can be found.
And
John.
Jeff and John.
Every Friday morning in your downloads if you subscribe to their We Like Drinking show. Jeff is a fellow wine lover and a certified specialist of wine through the Society of Wine Educators, so he is part of our tribe. We cannot thank him enough for his support, the tips, the laughs, and really, I mean, it's been so fun to see their show up and running and our podcast up and running, and he's also helped to get our Patreon page going. So much Patreon love to you, Jeff, and the drinking podcast brother from another mother.
That's right. Our fly, funky, fresh in the flesh, drinking podcast brother from another mother. No, we were so happy to, he was waiting for us to pull the trigger on it, and we did. And so thank you for your help on that. Yeah. And then we also have our It's Not 5 o'clock and We Don't Care listeners. So you want your podcast when you want it, you want your wine when you want it, and nobody's going to tell you when it's time to pull that cork. So these are the $5 level. Thank you. We love you, Meg from South Dakota. And Clay from Arizona.
What's up, Clay? I love you, bro. We hope that you will share Wine to Five with your friends and online community, and we certainly appreciate all your involvement and feedback. Leave us a burning wine question or comment on our website, and then you can hear your voice on our show. We'd also love it if you'd go to iTunes and show us some love there in the form of a glowing review so that other wine lovers can discover our Wine to Five community. So please visit us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, Google+. And if you want to build your collection of wine books or accessories like Ovino or other gadgets, please check out the online store, also located on our Wine to Five website.
And you can connect with Steph on Twitter at Albarello Soap and on the Albarello Soap Facebook page. Check out her videos on the Albarello YouTube channel. And girl, did I see you on some Instagram?
Yeah, I'm having fun on Instagram as the wine heroine.
Wine heroine with some sexy graphics on there. And you can connect with me too, Val. I'm on Twitter at WineGalUnboxed and on the Vino with Val Facebook page. And I'm on Instagram also as Vino with Val. And one more thing, guys. Don't forget to use the hashtag W25Challenge when you're trying new drinks, new wines, new any beverage. And you can win an opportunity to come on the show and co-host with us. But until next week, everybody, cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Wine to Five podcast. Be sure to check us out at Facebook/WineTWO5 and tune in next week for more fun and useful sip tips.